Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, an older, wiser, and healthier Jacob Rodriguez, and also a surprise candidate to join the ranks of starter along the defensive line, at least according to Joey McGuire. We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Great to be back with you, Chris, and great to be talking defense. As always, we will zero in on that side of the football a bit here today. Want to get to some things going on up front, including a guy that's gotten some mention this week from head coach Joey McGuire as a starter if they were playing a football game this week. Maybe a little bit of a surprise, but want to start with what is assuredly one of the foundational pieces, not only of the defense, but of the team overall. Timeline a little bit derailed a season ago, but we saw him make a return. And, of course, I'm sure he is chomping at the bit to get back to it in 2024. We're talking about the linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, and Coach McGuire was asked about some defensive leaders, and Jacob Rodriguez, the first name he mentioned this week.
Jacob Rodriguez, if you think about it, we've talked about it before, but in the 4 games that he started and finished, we were 4-0. And I think the most we gave up were 24 points. I could be wrong about that. It might have been 28, but we played our best defense. And he's a really, really good football player. We all know that. But the one thing that Jacob does is he's one of the best communicators that I've been around. He's extremely smart. He's got a high football IQ. So Jacob, Ben Roberts, Bryce Ramirez, like that leadership on our defense runs through that linebacker room. CJ Baskerville's really stepped up in the secondary, but really when you're talking about who the voices on defense, it's those really 3 guys, and they'll be on the field a lot.
No need to overcomplicate it, Chris. Rodriguez on the field, Red Raiders unbeaten a season ago, so let's keep that rolling.
I think Joey would tell you that as they looked back on it, that when Jacob went down off of that, I think it was a recovered fumble, or forced fumble, whatever it was, against Wyoming, that's when that game changed. And that's why he says games that he starts and finishes, because that's a game that obviously he started but did not finish, unfortunately. But I think that's where it kind of changed. And I think that his communication and leadership and getting everybody lined up properly and all those things that defensively just kind of started to get away from you just a little bit in that Wyoming game. So, I mean, if anybody's listened to this show, they know what you and I think about this kid. I mean, this is a Wichita Falls Rider, 2-way player that played some QB, played some safety. He played some playoff games in Lubbock, Texas, as a matter of fact. And he was just a quarterback. And I think that's what makes him so good as a linebacker, because he's seen the other perspective. But when you see him like up close, you're like, how in the world were you ever a quarterback? He looks like a prototype of a middle linebacker, and it's just the way he carries himself. He's one of these dudes that seems like he's 30 years old, and he's always been kind of an old head in a young person's body, and he's just mature beyond his years and doesn't say the wrong thing ever, doesn't make a misstep. Probably one of the purest dudes on your roster. Just the way he carries himself, the way he lives, the way, everything he's about, and he's good at footballing. I mean, give me about 84 more Jacob Rodriguez. I'm going to a lot of football games.
And you kind of wind up, I guess, in a position of luxury due to some adversity, because I don't know that we have the anticipation or expectation for Ben Roberts going into this year if he doesn't get the opportunity he did last year because of how thin it got with Rodriguez leaving the field. Now, obviously, you're not drawing it up that way. You want Rodriguez on the field last year, but it all kind of combined to create this tandem. And Coach McGuire mentions Bryce Ramirez as a part of that also, but the tandem of Roberts and Rodriguez, and it basically all started with that injury, right? I mean, that's kind of what set us down this path, I guess, to find out what a player Roberts is also.
Yeah, I think you bullseye. Yeah, retweet. How about that? Because we've talked about some of these offensive line issues, and it's how it's made us nervous, and yet there's other people that are getting meaningful reps, and this is how you build some depth and all those kinds of things. But I think that without Jacob going down, we don't have this version of Ben Roberts. There's just no way around it, and that's the payoff. It sucked at the time, and it wasn't fun at the time, and you're panicking at the time, or I was, and you are worried, and yet now here we are, and boy, you are better for it. Maybe. Yeah, you certainly are more well prepared going into this year at that spot, if anything. And it's just crazy because you mentioned Bryce Ramirez. I mean, that's somebody that I think is worlds different right now than he was a year ago at this time, when he was just kind of still trying to figure life out and what his body was going to allow him to do. And, yes, he was available and semi-playing, but it wasn't the same as I think you'll see this year. But the leadership bucket in that room runneth over. It's just spilling all over the place, because that's where the heart. I may even say, I don't know if this is overstating it. It's kind of the heart of your team right there in that, when that group, because there's nobody that's more respected in the locker room than Bryce Ramirez. He hasn't played a ton, and yet he's a captain. Should tell you all you need to know about that young man. Yeah. And then like Jacob and Ben, I mean, the production is there, the leadership is there, and you just have, it's like the one spot where I just have zero questions. That is starting running back. And the thing about running back is, okay, what's behind? But like in this spot, that's why I think John Curry's in such an ideal spot. Look what he's surrounded by. And then, so you hear about those 4 interior linebackers, and boy, I don't know if it's been a while since I felt as good about what you're dealing with. I mean, Rico and Jordan Brooks is not too far ago. Yeah. Rico and Colin Schooler, but I dare say these guys haven't maybe done it yet, but they're gonna be on par, if not surpass, which is a big time statement.
Yeah, that's lofty praise.
It is.
No question about it, because those guys are playmakers for Texas Tech. We did also get to hear from Rodriguez himself this week, and I want to take a listen to what he had to say when asked about the difference basically that a year has made after the path that he has traveled. What's changed? Here's Jacob Rodriguez. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app, where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. Of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. What's changed? Here's Jacob Rodriguez.
It's everything. I mean, leaps and bounds. I think not just me, but the whole defense, young guys and old guys, we can continue to push ourselves, and knowing the nuances of little stuff, kind of where the running back is, level 1, 2, or 3, or kind of where the linemen are looking, just different stuff for the game that you don't even think about when you're trying to figure out what your alignment is, what your job is. And once you have that down, then you can start thinking about actually playing situational football. And so I think that we have a lot of guys way ahead of where they were, even in the spring, not even a year ago, but even in the spring, we're leaps and bounds ahead. We put so much work in this summer, continuing to install and keep those calls fresh in our minds. The game has slowed down because the installs, and so year 3 of finally picking into his defense and knowing not what to do but why we do it. And so that type of stuff will help you look more at what the offense is doing. Situational football, whether it's third down or first down, second down, that type of stuff, kind of knowing where they like to go, sideline, hashes, numbers, kind of just where on the field, what depths, and that type of stuff.
Chris, I recall former Cowboys head coach Jimmy Johnson talking about he doesn't always have to have the most talented player, but he always wants a smart player. And I think Jacob Rodriguez sounds like he really fits that bill, as he brings a cerebral approach, not only to his position, but to the defense as a whole.
Yeah, instincts squared. That's because typically the guys that are just always around the ball, may not be biggest, fastest, whatever, but they understand angles. They understand what's happening. They're able to identify, not waste, no missteps. And plus, when you add some athleticism to it, like was what Jacob has, I just, it all kind of equals. But to have two kids like this next to each other with kind of the football IQ and the work ethic, and we've heard from both of them on this show in recent days or week or whatever it is, and you could just tell how well studied they are and how important that aspect of the game is to them, which it certainly is for that position. It's just what the quarterback is doing and surveying and pre-snap reads and progressions and going through defenses. That's what the middle linebacker's job is, trying to see everything in front of them and trying to identify and understand, okay, run, pass, what's motion do, how does this shift the whole deal. And it's going to be fascinating to see who is in charge of communication on that side of the ball.
Yeah,
sure.
I'd like to circle back to that subject before we're done this week, because there were some interesting comments from both Roberts and Rodriguez. Sounded like it wasn't quite settled as to how that's going to play out. So we'll get back to that before we are done this week. Chris, what kind of expectation do you recall there being for Rodriguez when he arrives at Texas Tech? Because I don't remember, just a ton of hype or like, wow, this dude is going to be salty. So did I just miss it, or did he really prove a lot of things on the field that then got him that kind of attention?
I knew him as a high school player, okay, and I knew he was really good at Wichita Falls Rider. Like I said, played both ways, QB and safety, and he weighed a bit less then. But everybody that would see him in high school go, God, he's just good at everything he does on the football field. There's nothing he can't do. And he's playing two premium positions, ones that require a lot of the mental part, okay? So he just wasn't ready to give up the QB thing. And I think that it tells you, University of Virginia is very difficult to get into. I think that he was attracted by the education and they were going to give him a shot at quarterback. But then I just think that he missed Texas and all those things. And so when he got back here, it was a situation where I think that you were out of spots at the time, but it was very much under the radar. And I don't think there was any anticipation of he's going to be this or that for us. We just see a really good football player that wants to get back home. He's willing to kind of walk on for a brief period of time. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's the way it happens. And then shortly after he's here, it's like, hey, he's going to transition to linebacker. I just never in my wildest dreams would have imagined that this is what we're dealing with. But it was 2 years ago in Joey's first year when he was a part-time player and he was like one of these subs coming in. I'm like, guy just is around the ball every time he comes in, and there's zero drop-off from when he comes in. And you could just tell at the time. And this is why they were so conscious of trying to preserve his red shirt last year. Remember when you get down to the end of the regular season and he can play in either Central Florida or Texas, but we're not going to do them both and all those things. And it probably causes a bit of a hiccup in your locker room when it's like, okay, Jacob is not going to suit up for us when we're going to Austin, because you're thinking like, damn. But it as bad as that day was, I mean, super thankful that was the decision that was made, because now he's got, if he wants it, 2 full years here. And like you could just be talking about the numbers they could put up and the productivity and all those things. But no, this is something he's kind of like self-made, I think, in the and he doesn't have like all-world numbers yet. Like that's the thing. It's not like this resume. I just think we've seen it in spurts, and I think that we know what we're going to get out of him. And I'm super glad that he's wearing a double T on the side of his helmet.
No question. And the Longhorns better thank their lucky stars. They got so lucky he wasn't on the field, because he's a walking 50-point difference. I have no doubt in my mind. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Before we move on from the linebackers, Chris, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what Joey McGuire mentioned about Bryce Ramirez, in that he was only on the field last year because he's tougher than boot leather. I mean, he was talking about kind of like, he really wasn't at a spot yet where he could just cut it loose and go back to being what he was. But the intangibles of that guy is why I guess we even saw him at all, really, in the spots that we did see him.
Yeah, I think he's an emotional leader, and I think now you'll get some playmaking with it, because prior to him getting hurt in Raleigh, North Carolina on that brutal Saturday night, he was kind of starting to push forward, and I think Tim was kind of going, I think he may be our best third down backer. I mean, I think he's kind of pushed his way through. And then, you just, the unfortunate situation happened with the injury. And then you just don't know what you're going to get from him. But he's just smiling all the time. I think he's what's fun about sports, man. And he's what's fun about culture, and why he's a tangible, I can reach out and touch what a team's culture is all about. Like he's an example of that. And some teams have those guys. Some teams try to force that onto somebody, or like they kind of try to appoint it. This is just somebody that has come in and he just works and smiles and has come back and won't be denied, and is for all the right things. So I hope that, I mean, those three guys on the field at the same time, that's a lot of fun there. And that ought to make Tim DeRuyter feel really good. The tech fan feel really good. But what a couple of studs, man. And they're kind of different classifications and they're spread out a little bit, but they've all played a bunch. And man, I just, that's why I say I'm not so certain that that's not the best position on your entire football team right there, because of the three guys we're sitting here talking about.
Yeah, as a collective, great argument to be made that could be the case. Let's stick in the defensive box up front. Want to wrap up our conversation with some interesting things playing out along the defensive line. Want to wrap up our conversation with some interesting things playing out along the defensive line, and we'll get to a thought from Joey McGuire talking about someone that is, so far at least, just sort of forcing his way into major minutes or possibly a starting spot if you were playing a game this week. But first, I want to get to another guy that it sounds like was just doing a lot of toughing it out a year ago, and that's Joseph Adedire, who I know you had very high hopes for. We talked about him last offseason going into the year, that he could really be a playmaker for you, and he did make some plays, but it kind of sounds like we only got to sort of scratch the surface because of getting dinged up a little bit.
Yeah, so I believe it was in the Oregon game. He suffered a bit of a shoulder injury, and it was severe, but not severe enough to where he had to be just shut down. It's like, okay, we can do this. At some point, this is going to have to be repaired. And these are the kinds of things that you kind of find out about, but you can't really tell anybody, or you're not really sure how really bad it is. But it's like, well, he's still playing out there, but he had this brace on, trying to keep it, to protect it. But think about that. He basically plays an entire season, and he could have been shut down at any point. And they were just hopeful that nothing else happened to that shoulder. So what you get last year from him is a gutsy effort, and one that he didn't feel particularly great any one Saturday. I mean, the defensive end version of what Baron Morton was going through, honestly. But he's just not having to throw. But whenever if you think about these edge guys, when you reach out, you're getting blocked and you reach out for a tackler, and you just think about the torque that's getting put on that shoulder. But he got this fixed, and he got it fixed before the spring and missed all the spring football and all those things. And we talk about Lux and Baskerville, mentioned McCarty on the last show. Quincy Ledet is one. Joseph Adedire is got a ton of experience under that belt compared to the majority of the guys on defense. And I just don't think he was allowed to put his best foot forward last year because football happens. This is just kind of the deal. Guys have to play dinged up and hurt. But don't sleep on him. This was a really highly recruited player. He's got a motor. He is somebody that, while I think Isaac Smith, based on what we had seen, deserves a lot of the chatter, but Adedire's on the other side. So I'm excited to see what Big Joe can do with a healthy shoulder, because it'd be tough to play that position, man. When there's a lot of torque and pressure on that spot.
Yeah, it ain't exactly kicking field goals or anything like that. So hopefully he's got some better luck in that regard this year. Sounds like another guy we better not be sleeping on, because he gets mention after mention after mention, is one Jaden Cofield. And I'd like to hear from you on some expectations for him this year and sort of where he's come from, what his path was like up to this 2024 season. But first, let's take a listen to Red Raider head coach Joey McGuire talking about Mr. Cofield.
He made a huge play today, and actually he made a huge play in our first team compete, very first play. Tackled Taj in the backfield, didn't tackle him, kept him up. Today he tackled him. I told Z, I said, if we were playing a game right now, he would be one of the starters. Like, he would go out with the first group. I just love that kid, man. He's always smiling. If you want to feel good, he makes you feel good because he's so appreciative. Like, he appreciates everything that we do in this program, from the way we treat him, the way we eat, especially for a 300-plus pound guy. He really likes the way we eat, and he does, man. He's always like, if I say Cofield, he's just going to smile and give me the guns up, and I think him being a mid-year, I think him really coming on at the end of the year, being able to play in the bowl game, and he had a great spring, I think he's doing a really good job.
So what's the story surrounding Jaden Cofield?
Well, he redshirted last year. He's from out the greater Austin area, played in a handful of games so he can maintain his eligibility from last year. But and again, early enrollee the year before or whatever it was. But this is what's fun about recruiting really well. Like you said before we pitched to that clip about, you were going to ask me about expectations for him. I would have told you coming into the camp or the season in general, I don't really have much for guys like this but this is what's fun about fall camps and what's fun about team sports is that there's guys that just all of a sudden are like, you know what, he's pretty good. And obviously you recruited him and you're developing him, and that's how the household names start to begin to happen. At some point they have where it clicks. Now, are we still talking about him this way in 2 weeks or 6 weeks from now? I certainly hope so. But because somebody like this is only going to make the James Hansons, the DB Carrolls, the Quincy Ledets, the Duda Bankses have to work harder and grind for what they feel like they're owed or trying to earn from a rep standpoint. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, Joey was like, we got a game Saturday, man. I tell Zarnell that's a starter. And then you got these older guys going, wait a second. And so that's rising tides lift all boats, right? So, I mean, it just not a ton of expectation here, but there'll be more like this that just kind of push their way through. They make plays. They earn the right to be talked about and discussed by the head coach or the coordinators or whatever it is. And then you start to earn some respect. Now, at some point, you got to go do it when the lights are on and the games count. But certainly is making some news because, like, for example, Amir Washington in some ways was kind of that. You hadn't really heard his name at all during camp. That's not no fault of his own. Maybe he's crushing it. He just hadn't been being asked about on the right day or whatever. But
Yeah.
Jaden Cofield, you're right. There's some consistency there, and that's what makes this a lot of fun, because I'm all about quality big folks on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, give me all of them, small, medium, and large, young, old, new, whatever it is. You need them to win and win big. And, because this is somebody that I would have said to you second, third string type. But, I mean, you're telling me starter, so, yeah, here we go.
And we'll see how it plays out through the rest of fall camp. But if he could emerge as a contributor, much less somebody who's in the category of starter, that would be quite the boost for that group, and you would think for the defense and team overall. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you for the insights and perspectives, and they'll be back around to do it again.
Guns up, people. We'll talk to you mañana. Enjoyed it. Hope you have a good Thursday out there.
Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode, and you can make it the best that Thursday can be. Thanks for joining us in the YouTube comments. Of course, that's one of the best ways to help us grow the show, and we always appreciate being your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12, also on YouTube or anywhere you find podcasts. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks for being out there, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.